cherish the good news, and rightly so, because we haven't had much of it lately. The big global inflation wave is in retreat. A combination of resolute monetary policy action, easing supply chain constraints, and moderating food and energy prices is guiding us back in the direction of price stability. And this has been done without tipping the global economy into recession and large-scale job losses, something we saw during the pandemic and after past inflation episodes, and which many feared we would see again. But we didn't. Both in the US and Euro area labor markets, we see, just taking these two examples, we see cooling in an orderly manner. And let's pause and recognize this is a big achievement. Where did this resilience come from? Answer: from strong policy and institutional foundations built over time, and from international policy cooperation as countries learn to act fast and act together. We are benefiting from central bank independence in advanced economies and in many emerging markets. We are benefiting from years of prudential reforms in banking, from progress made in building fiscal institutions, and progress made in capacity development worldwide. But despite the good news, don't expect any victory parties next week, for at least 3 reasons. Well, one, inflation rates may be falling, but the higher price level that we all feel in our wallets is here to stay. Families are hurting, people are angry. Advanced economies saw inflation rates at once-in-a-generation highs, and that memory is not going to be erased rapidly. So did many emerging market economies. But look at how bad the situation was for low-income countries. At the country level and at the level of individuals, inflation always hits the poor the hardest. Well, 2, and even worse, we are in a difficult geopolitical environment. We are all very worried about the expanding conflict in the Middle East and its potential to destabilize regional economies and global oil and gas markets. Its humanitarian impact, alongside the prolonged wars in Ukraine and wars elsewhere, is heartbreaking, and it is harming confidence in the world economy. And on top of it all, this is happening at a time when our forecasts point to an unforgiving combination of low growth and high debt, a difficult future. Let's take a closer look. Medium-term growth is forecast to be lackluster, not sharply lower than pre-pandemic, but far from good enough. Not enough to eradicate world poverty, nor to create the number of jobs we require, nor to generate the tax revenues that governments need to service heavy debt loads, while attending to vast investment needs, including for the green transition. This picture is made more troubling by high and rising public debt, way higher than before the pandemic. even after the brief but significant fall in debt to GDP as inflation lifted nominal GDP. And do please notice the shaded area on this chart. What it shows is that in severe but plausible adverse scenario, debt could climb some 20 percentage points of GDP above our baseline. What does it mean for fiscal space? To answer this question, let's look at the share of government revenue consumed by interest payments. This is where high debt, high interest rates, and low growth come together, because it is growth that generates the revenue governments need to function and invest. As debt increases, fiscal space contracts disproportionately more in low-income countries. Not all debt burdens are made equal. And fiscal space keeps shrinking. Just look at the frightening evolution of the interest-to-revenue ratio over time. We can immediately see how the tough spending choices have become tougher, with higher debt payments hanging on our heads. Schools or climate? Digital connectivity or roads and bridges? This is what it comes down to, making these tough choices. And to make matters worse, we live in deeply troubled times. The peace dividend from the end of the Cold War that Andrea talked about, I experienced on the colder side of it, is increasingly at risk. In a world of more wars and more insecurity, defense expenditures may well keep rising while aid budgets fall further behind the growing needs of developing countries. Not only is development assistance too small, but major players, driven by national security concerns, are increasingly resorting to industrial policy and protectionism, creating one trade restriction after another. Going forward, trade will not be the same engine of growth as before. It is the fracturing I warned of back in 2019, right from this very place. Except it is worse. It is like pouring cold water on already lukewarm world economy. So what is my message today? My message today: we can do better.